An Amish family in Lancaster County keeps 500 meat rabbits and spends nothing on feed. Not almost nothing, nothing. Every pound of food those rabbits eat comes from the farm itself, from the grass, the garden, the kitchen, and the land along every fence line. This is how they do it. Why rabbits? The Amish did not choose rabbits arbitrarily. Of every meat animal available to a small farm operation, rabbits produce the highest return per square foot, per pound of input, and per dollar of infrastructure. A doe rabbit can produce 50 or more offspring per year. Each offspring reaches slaughter weight in 8 to 12 weeks. The meat is lean, high in protein, and requires no refrigeration for short periods in cooler months. A family that masters rabbit production at scale has solved a significant portion of its annual protein requirement without touching its cattle, pigs, or poultry. The setup. 500 rabbits sounds like a commercial operation. In an Amish context, it is a family enterprise managed entirely without electricity, climate control, or purchased infrastructure. The hutches are built from salvaged lumber and wire mesh, constructed by the family over a single season. Does are housed individually in tiered hutches to prevent fighting and manage breeding cycles precisely. Growing fryers, the young rabbits being raised to slaughter weight, are housed in groups of 4 to 6 in ground-level wire cages that can be moved across pasture. Bucks are kept separately and rotated among does on a managed schedule. The entire system is built to be maintained by 2 adults and 2 older children working 1 to 2 hours per morning without mechanical assistance of any kind. Pasture rotation. The foundation of the zero-cost system is daily pasture rotation. The ground-level wire cages housing the growing fryers are moved forward 1 cage length every morning to a fresh section of grass. Each cage covers roughly 4 square feet of ground. In a single day, the rabbits in that cage consume every blade of grass within reach, leave behind a concentrated deposit of manure, and are moved to clean ground the following morning. Across 500 rabbits distributed in ground cages, this means several hundred square feet of pasture are grazed and fertilized every day without any human labor beyond moving the cages. The grass recovers within 2 to 3 weeks, at which point the rotation brings the cages back around. A well-managed pasture rotation system means the Amish family's lawn, paddock, and orchard floor are continuously maintained, fertilized, and productive all by the rabbits themselves, all at zero cost. The fodder system. The pasture rotation handles spring, summer, and early fall. The fodder system handles everything else and supplements the pasture year-round. Fodder is germinated grain, typically barley or winter wheat, grown in shallow trays with nothing but water and allowed to sprout over 8 days before being fed to the rabbits. The mathematics of this system are remarkable. One 50-pound bag of barley seed, which costs roughly $15 at a farm supply store, produces over 200 pounds of living green fodder within 8 days. For a family growing their own grain, which many Amish families do, the cost drops to zero. The Amish run a continuous rotation of trays. A new tray started each day, an 8-day-old tray harvested and fed each day. The rabbits consume the entire tray roots, sprouts, and seed mat, leaving nothing. In winter, when pasture is buried under snow, the fodder system alone carries the herd through without a single purchased bag of pellets. Garden scraps and kitchen waste. An Amish household with 10 people cooking 3 full meals a day from scratch generates a quantity of organic waste that most modern households would find difficult to imagine. Carrot tops, beet greens, outer cabbage leaves, corn husks, apple cores, potato peels, squash seeds, overripe tomatoes, every vegetable end, every fruit that did not make it to the jar, every garden surplus that exceeds what the family can preserve, all of it goes to the rabbits before it goes anywhere else. An Amish garden in midsummer is producing more vegetable matter than the family can consume, even with aggressive canning and storage. The rabbits absorb this surplus cleanly and completely. What would otherwise become compost pile waste becomes rabbit weight gain. Rabbits can safely consume almost every common garden vegetable and fruit, and the variety in their diet during peak garden season produces visibly healthy animals with dense, well-flavored meat. Nothing leaves the farm as waste that could instead pass through a rabbit first. Wild foraging. Every Amish property has edges, fence lines, ditch banks, roadsides, the borders between cultivated ground and woods, and those edges grow food that costs nothing to harvest. Dandelion is one of the most nutritious plants a rabbit can eat, high in calcium and vitamin A, and it grows on every farm in quantities that most people spend money and effort trying to eliminate. Plantain, the broad-leafed weed common to any disturbed ground, is equally nutritious and equally free. Clover along fence lines, chicory in the lane. Comfrey grown deliberately at the garden's edge specifically because it produces enormous quantities of protein-rich leaf matter several times per season without replanting. The Amish children's morning task on many farms includes a foraging circuit, a walk along the fence lines with a basket, collecting whatever is ready. 20 minutes of walking by a 10-year-old produces enough wild greens to supplement 50 rabbits for a day. Across a full growing season, this daily forage circuit contributes a meaningful portion of the herd's total nutrition at the cost of nothing except the 20 minutes. The manure loop. Rabbit manure is the only common livestock manure that can be applied directly to garden beds without composting first. Unlike chicken or cattle manure, rabbit pellets are cold, they will not burn plant roots, they do not require a decomposition period, and they can be scattered directly onto soil the same day they are collected. In an Amish rabbit operation, the manure produced by 500 rabbits is a significant agricultural resource. Each rabbit produces roughly 1 pound of manure per day. 500 rabbits produce 500 pounds daily, enough to fertilize a substantial garden operation without purchasing a single bag of commercial fertilizer. The garden fed by rabbit manure produces the vegetables and fodder that feed the rabbits. The rabbits produce the manure that feeds the garden. The loop is closed, the costs are zero, and the output of each system amplifies the output of the other. This is not a modern innovation. It is simply what farming looked like before petroleum-based fertilizer made it easier to buy inputs than to generate them on site. The winter system. The most common objection to zero-cost rabbit feeding is winter the season when pasture disappears, garden production stops, and the question of what 500 rabbits eat becomes genuinely challenging. The Amish answer to this question is built in summer. Timothy, hay, and alfalfa are cut and dried during peak growing season and stored in quantities sufficient to carry the herd through the coldest months. Root vegetables, turnips, mangels, fodder beets grown specifically for livestock are harvested in autumn and stored in the root cellar alongside the family's own food supply. The indoor fodder system, running on stored grain from the summer harvest, produces fresh green sprouts continuously, regardless of outdoor temperature. Dried comfrey, dried herbs, and dried garden surplus stored in late summer round out the winter feed supply. The result is a herd that eats as well in January as it does in July, entirely from resources the farm produced and stored during the months of abundance. The winter is not a problem the Amish solve in winter. It is a problem they solve in July. The breeding system at scale. 500 rabbits is not a static number, it is a continuous production target maintained through precise breeding management. The Amish maintain a core herd of breeding does, typically 40 to 50 animals, each capable of producing 8 to 12 kits per litter and delivering 5 to 7 litters per year. Does are bred on a rotation that ensures a steady supply of fryers reaching slaughter weight every week rather than a feast and famine cycle of large batches followed by gaps. Buck-to-doe ratios are kept at roughly 1 buck per 10 does, with bucks rested between breedings to maintain fertility. Weaning happens at 4 weeks, after which kits move to the growing cages on pasture and does are rested briefly before the next breeding. Culling is decisive. Does that produce small litters or poor maternal behavior are removed from the breeding program immediately. The result is a herd that is continuously replacing itself, continuously producing fryers, and continuously generating the weekly harvest of meat that makes the system worth running at this scale. What it all produces. 500 rabbits managed under this system produce approximately 250 to 300 fryers per month at slaughter weight, each dressing out to 3 to 4 pounds of meat. That is between 750 and 1,200 pounds of meat monthly from a system that costs nothing to feed. At a conservative market value of $5 per pound for pasture-raised rabbit meat, which sells easily at Amish farm stands and English farmers markets alike, that output represents $3,500 to $6,000 of food value every month. The family consumes a significant portion directly, reducing their grocery expenditure to near zero for protein. The surplus is sold, traded, or given to community members in need. The pelts, dried and cured, provide material for gloves and trim. The organ meat goes to the farm dogs. The bones are boiled for broth. There is no part of the rabbit the Amish do not use, and there is no input in the system they pay for. The children who run it. No Amish rabbit operation of this scale runs on adult labor alone. The children are not helpers, they are operators. By the age of 7 or 8, an Amish child on a rabbit farm knows how to move a pasture cage without disturbing the animals inside it, how to check a does litter for kits that are not thriving, and how to harvest a fodder tray and distribute it across the growing cages without waste. By 12, they are managing entire sections of the herd, independently checking water levels, identifying animals that are off their feed, flagging does that are due for breeding, and dispatching fryers on processing days without flinching. By 14 or 15, an Amish teenager can run the full daily operation without adult supervision from start to finish. This is not child labor in the exploitative sense the phrase implies. It is apprenticeship in the oldest and most complete sense, learning a productive system by operating it under guidance until the system is as familiar as breathing. The children who grow up running 500 rabbits understand animal husbandry, nutrition, breeding cycles, pasture management, and food processing before they finish 8th grade. They understand it not as academic knowledge, but as physical, practice knowledge that lives in their hands and their daily habits. When they eventually establish their own households, they do not need to learn how to feed a family from the land. They already know. They have been doing it since they were old enough to carry a fodder tray without spilling it. Modern homesteaders can take from this. The number 500 sounds intimidating to anyone who has never kept livestock, but the principles of this system scale down completely. A backyard operation of 20 rabbits, run on the same pasture rotation and fodder system, produces a meaningful quantity of protein for a family of 4, with no feed costs beyond the initial setup. The fodder system requires nothing more than a shelf, some trays, and a 50-pound bag of barley. The pasture rotation requires nothing more than a wire cage with a movable bottom and a lawn. The manure loop works on any scale. 10 rabbits fertilize a substantial kitchen garden. The Amish did not invent any of these techniques individually. Pasture rotation, fodder sprouting, and garden integration are documented in agricultural literature going back centuries. What the Amish did was combine them into a single integrated system and refused to abandon it when commercial pellets became available. That refusal, rooted not in stubbornness, but in a deep understanding of what a closed-loop farm system actually produces, is what makes their rabbit operation one of the most efficient small-scale protein production systems operating in the United States today. About food independence. Most modern households are 2 supply chain disruptions away from empty refrigerators. The Amish are not. The difference is not income, location, or luck. It is a deliberate commitment to producing food from the land they already own, using systems that require no purchased inputs once established. The rabbit operation is one piece of that commitment, but it illustrates the principle clearly. An Amish family that has built its fodder system, established its pasture rotation, and closed its manure loop has created a food source that cannot be interrupted by a store closure, a feed price increase, or a supply chain failure of any kind. The land produces the feed produces the rabbits produce the meat, the manure, and the next generation of animals. Nothing enters the cycle from outside, and nothing is wasted inside it. That is not a primitive way